Well, hi folks, welcome to Never on the Backfoot. The women's 2026 auction of the 100 is like done and dusted yesterday. And, we could see some really interesting purchases. Franchisees spent up to like 4 million. It did signal like a major change even in how women's franchise cricket is perceived and all of that. In this episode, I'm joined by Darshan Senthil, who's at this point like a master auctioneer and an expert himself, all things cricket. And yeah, we're trying to look at the major and the biggest moments of this auction, the IPL style takeover, and all of that. What we sort of make of how each squad is shaping up. But yeah, let me just cut to the chase. Hi Darshan, what did you make of the auctions yesterday itself? I know this is very like we planned it really in short notice, but we were following the auctions really closely anyway. So good to sort of extend that conversation here, right?
Yes. Oh, absolutely. So thank you again for that wonderful introduction. Thanks for having me as always. Always a pleasure to be here on Never on the Back Foot. It really was a wonderful auction. It was very interesting to see. This is, I think, the first women's auction I've seen on this sort of a scale with 8 teams. So it was interesting to see how the dynamics were different compared to, like, say the WPL auction, which is our only really point of comparison with the increase in teams and also the way that teams had to view the players and particularly the purchase of uncapped players and slightly lesser known talents. So that dynamic was really interesting to see, and it was really interesting to see how the teams adapted to balance and maybe even see of the some of the purchases that connect across different leagues. So it was really a fun auction to watch, and definitely it's been a really good start to the women's 100 as we know it. Yeah, so it's been
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, couldn't agree better. And to actually, kickstart our discussion itself, Asta goes on to ask us this question, something, I was thinking of yesterday as well. If Smriti Mandan and Jamie Rodriguez, had entered the auction instead of being pre-signed, do you think there would have been a bidding war for them? I definitely think yes. They sort of been undercut, because they've been pre-signed, so there's like already fixed amounts in that way. But Darshan, again, they would have really broken that auction system had they gone in.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, like a lot of the like we talk about someone like a Nat Silverbrunt or someone like even some of the foreigners like an Ash Gardner, players like these could have really broken the bank. I think with the larger, especially with the purse being much larger as it is, we could have seen some really huge picks. But this is parts of it. You see similar things even in other leagues like the IPL, for example, where a lot of the top retention brackets are not necessarily the highest prices at auction. But yeah, it's just part and parcel of it. There's no Can't really think of a good way to counterbalance that. But yeah, it's just part and parcel of it. So,
Yeah, honestly, not reading too much into it. Hopefully, we will see their participation throughout, the entire season itself. No injuries or anything else to sort of jinx that sort of happens. Asta also going on to probably ask or just comment that many people are calling Deepthi Sharma steal at base price, but considering her recent WPL form, it hasn't been that great. Do you think the price actually reflects her current T20 value? Again, Deepti Sharma lately has been under like so much criticism, right? People like questioning her place in the team, the Australia tour itself, kind of being a very forgettable one for her in that regard. But hey, we're talking about the ODI World Cup winner and player of the tournament, right? But just the past couple of months have been slightly tough for her.
oh yeah, for sure. The WPL was a bit of a difficult time. I think with the bat as well, she drew some criticism for some of the knocks, and not a probably had a bit of a difficult time in Australia as well. But I still think there's value in her as a player. I think just with the right kind of usage, um, in particular her spin is still something that I think is quite valuable, even if her batting is maybe a bit so-so. So I think it's an okay pick for the Sunrisers. I think provide the only thing that I will probably speak to this a bit more once we get to the team reviews. But the only thing I have with Sunrise is that they've paired her with Annabelle Sutherland, who's also a bit slow off the blocks with the bat. So from that point of view, it's a bit 50-50. But generally speaking, Deepthi Sharma base price, even as an overseas player, is a pretty good deal, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And the fact that she's a part of the London Spirit team last time around too, right? The defending champions, so to say, she did contribute a lot to the team and in the final as well. But Darshan, again, let's start right from the top itself, right? We got the news of this whole IPL-esque takeover that is going to have rebranding of the league itself in a very, IPL sort of nature itself. Just what did you make of that? Were you like happy because the 100 had its own charm, like, colors of the franchise, the names itself, but now it just feels like an entirely different commodity from what we sort of knew it to be. Just how have you like grappled with that?
Yeah, it's been something that I've seen has got very mixed reactions from what I've seen on social media and such. Um, For me personally, I'm someone who's sort of been brought up with the IPL brand, so it doesn't feel like a huge shift for me. But as someone who grew up in England, who's grown up watching these 100 brands, gone to the stadium, like seeing someone like an Oval Invincibles take on Northern Superchargers, that would be quite a shift, I think. And I could understand them being a little bit upset with that because that brand is something that they would have grown up with. Which is why I kind of give the Southern Brave a little bit of credit for sticking with the name, even though they've now been, of course, taken over by GMR, who own Delhi Capitals. Um, so that's one side to it. So definitely, I can fully sympathize with people who might not be fully happy with it. On the flip side, though, I think for English cricket at large, like these 100 sales have pumped in quite a substantial amount of money into their ecosystem. I think the figure was something on the order of 900 million pounds or something of the sort from those sales that took place, of course, last November or so. So that's definitely going to help them. That goes to the counties, that goes to fundamental grassroots infrastructure, goes towards ensuring England can still play Test cricket and such moving forward. So that's definitely one thing that it will be a benefit. So it will be a benefit to English cricket maybe in the long term. So that's also one thing to consider. But yeah, at the same time, it is a bit yeah, it's obviously a bit tricky to see that some of these a team that you might have been following for 3 years as a fan suddenly switch to a different name. Obviously, that can be a bit painful, I suppose. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, there's always two sides to the story. A lot of fans haven't really taken to that really well. And probably just addressing the elephant in the room itself, Darshan, let's actually take this comment. Team Super going on to say, I knew this was a really long shot, but I was rooting for Fatima Sana too, along with a bunch of other Indian players. And there's this whole report about, a certain shadow ban happening to Pakistan players, them possibly not getting picked. And in the auction list too, right, we had the likes of Sadia Iqbal and Fatima Sana. A lot of us were hoping, hey, they might actually get picked, but that wasn't the case itself, right? Owing to a lot of geopolitical tensions between the countries and everything. But just what do you make of that? That none of the franchises sort of went after them, and a little bit of a loss to the league itself.
I think so. For Fatima Sanan particularly, I was actually rooting for her to get picked, just because of some of her recent form has just been ridiculous. Like, think about the South Africa series. I think they were 40 for five or something in 10 overs, and she batted them to 180, which no matter what conditions you're batting in, that is a ridiculous knock. And then she backed it up with good performances with the ball. So I think she is a phenomenal player, and it is a loss to the league that she's not been picked. Um, I'm still not with the geopolitics. It's a bit tricky because actually in the men's auction that's ongoing right now, Abrar Ahmed got a pretty big deal with Sunrisers Leeds. So it's that's so hopeful. I'm hoping that it's not entirely geopolitical the reasons for her exclusion, but we do see kind of biases within franchises all the time. Like for example, in the IPL, it took a long time for them to break away from picking just Australian talent and sort of moving into other talent pools. There was a period where a lot of teams were bidding almost exclusively on Big Bash talent, even though they were not arguably the best players in the league. And we still kind of see it today, like players from Zimbabwe and other associate nations don't necessarily get their dues. So I'm hoping it's not great either, but I'm just hoping it's not something that's. I hope it's not like pure discrimination on the basis of geopolitics, because I think that's a loss to everybody, both to the league and just to fans watching. I feel like that would be a big shame. So hopefully that's not it, but yeah, I couldn't say for certain. But definitely from the perspective of Fatima Sana, it's a big loss to the league because I think again, high quality player and someone I would like to see take part in more of these women's franchisee competitions moving forward.
Yeah, agreed 100%. And hopefully, when there's like the whole wild card draft system that's going to happen, and there is some franchise, which will eventually end up picking up, fingers crossed for that. But we're just looking at the franchises and their spending pattern itself, Darshan. They spent nearly 4 million, right? For you, again, do you think this auction itself has marked that sort of a turning point, right? In women's franchise cricket, this much money getting spent. Of course, you have the WPL and all of that, but in the 100, something like this happening just signals a massive shift, right?
I think so. It's you definitely you've got, and again the purse size doubled pretty much from what it was last year. I think it was £440,000 last year. It's doubled to 880, and the median salaries are actually not too far off from the ones in the men's competition, at least just from some things I've been looking at, and they're also very much on par with the WPL, which is normally one of the higher paid leagues. Like even if you look at the pay disparity between the IPL and the men's 100, it's not nearly as large as the one between the WPL and the women's 100. So they are setting a good standard, and hopefully this goes up in time. And yeah, it's good to see also the growth of more women's leagues coming forward. And I think that an auction presents greater competitiveness in terms of picking talents. So, like for example, now if you have a, let's say, someone will talk about in due time, Kira Chatri, the domestic batter. Now there's all you now you can't just sort of like walk up to her and sign her. There's all this competition to bring that sort of a player in, which is but probably not what it was like previously. So from that's something that's quite new to women's cricket. This whole the sort of the the data, the analytics that you have to do, the scouting you have to do to bring these sorts of players in. That's something that I'm looking forward to seeing more of. Hopefully, the 100 is a good starting place. So hopefully, it's something that evolves to other leagues as well. And particularly, I hope it maybe even comes to somewhere like South Africa looking forward. But yeah, definitely a big turning point for women's cricket at large.
Yeah, I think the way the league has just embraced professionalization has just been like unparalleled in that way. And as much as we celebrate that, hey, it's crossed like the 4 million mark. A lot of players went home with big paydays. I felt somewhere, and this was I think an opinion that was largely under discussion on Twitter as well, that the auction did expose right a lot of valuation gaps, right, especially your established internationals, emerging domestic players as well, and some players even having like a cut from what they were earning from the last time. Take the case of Emma Lamb itself, right? Just what did you make of that? Do you think it sort of did expose like, hey, there are still like some issues when it's with the auction system itself? And actually, let's get your thoughts on the auctions itself, right? A lot of people are against the whole concept of like putting players like this on sale, like selling them like cattle itself, and that's how you see, right? Not a lot of leagues have the auction system; they have drafts and all of that. So again, just your thoughts on the auction system itself and the valuation gap.
Yeah, I've heard of that. I've heard that for a couple of years. I remember even way back in like maybe 10 years ago, I heard people talking about that in the auction system. Actually, even before the WPL auction, I think Sophie Devine was saying something like, it might feel like you're being valued as so and so. So that's as a player, it probably can't feel good if you're going in with maybe with expectations and such, and you have a price tag put on you. It works both ways. Like whether you might feel undervalued on one hand, and on the flip side, you get a very big pay tag, and that can actually affect how well you do on the field when you feel the pressure, the weight, and expectations on you. Um, from like a tactical standpoint, I do enjoy auctions. I think it's interesting just to see how things progress, how to budget your purse, the kinds of targets you go after, um, the way you set yourself up. There's all kinds of different there's interesting patterns you can do. You can see. I've hosted a lot of mock auctions in the last few years, so it's interesting to see how those spending patterns change depending on player form, where players come up in different sets. So really, just strategy. That sort of strategy is very interesting to me. It's very interesting in drafts as well, I'd say. Um, the only thing is in cricket in particular, I found that tournaments that have drafts, they also tend to do a lot of pre-signings as opposed to the more as opposed to having more just a few retentions like we have in a few other leagues. And I feel like these pre-signings sort of take a lot of it out for me because um, if the salaries are not disclosed, then the owner with more money just wins everything. If you look at Trinbago Knight Riders in the CPL, for example, look at how many big West Indian names just basically go to play for them. So it's and you can't even really blame them because they want to make the most out of their talent, and one owner can pay more than the others maybe care to. So that's the one thing I don't like. I'm not against, like, I think drafts are as interesting as auctions. I think particularly when you have the snake drafts and things like that, just planning that is actually very interesting as well. And even the concept of like picking players in different tiers of drafts. Like for example, I think in the women's 100 draft, I remember there was a point where Smithy was picked as I think in a bronze category instead of a silver, and that freed up space for the Adelaide Strikers to do this, to pick a few other names. So it's interesting for sure. But again the whole concept of pre-signings is something that I don't really like, and that's a bit of a problem even with things like the SA20 and the 100, which have adapted auctions. So I would hope that's something that's done away with permanently, so that every team is on a level playing field like we have in the IPL, and that I think helps everybody. That makes the recruitment more fair, and it just improves the quality.
Yeah, fair enough. Food for thought, actually, in that regard, because a lot of people feel, auctions are like better for, building your more competitive squads. Basically, everyone's starting on the same level playing field with the same amount of money itself. But again, just looking at some of the buys that happened yesterday, Sophie, Devine, and Beth Mooney, my word. 210k, like pounds. I mean, it was expected, right? But somewhere the auction also did sort of inflate their value itself. But did you again expect that there was going to be like a lot of bidding for them, and they'd end up like with such a big paycheck?
So I didn't expect that magnitude of price. I was expecting most of the prices to stick at around 150, 160,000 pounds, maybe 170. But I did fully expect Sophie Devine to be one of the top earners, just because the way she's come back since she took that break, in early 2025, has been pretty amazing. She's did well the women's 100, was MVP in the last WPL, picked up a very big paycheck there as well, and now she's come here with a nice big paycheck here as well. So all very deserving for her. I think she's been really at her best, and yeah, I think the Welsh Fire will be very happy to have her. Um, for Beth Mooney, I was a little bit more surprised just because. So Sophie Devine she gives you bowling as well as batting, but for Beth Mooney you only really get the wicket keeping option, which to be fair is a bit of a commodity, but at the same time, um, that much money for a single discipline player was a bit interesting. And particularly, it was interesting that the other losing team was actually Manchester Supergiants, who went up to 200 for her, despite having Smriti and Meg Lanning there as well. And both of them can be players that take a bit of time to start. And Beth Mooney's not someone who really gets off the blocks very quickly. So you don't really have any contrast there. Maybe we'll speak more about this as we get to the individual teams. But that was a bit surprising to me. But yeah, I can't help but feel happy for both of them. Both are well deserving players. Would I have made those picks at those prices? It's more debatable, but I can't help but feel happy for them really. So yeah, definitely we're both very happy for both of them.
Yeah, very interesting purchases in that regard. And, teammates at Perth Scorchers now, they'll obviously be playing in different teams, but still, going for that amount is definitely a good sign. But even Danny Gibson, right? Darshan, again, a lot of us didn't expect her to go for the kind of money that she did. People have just been, scratching their head like, hey, this is a player who's had like a stress fracture, who's been advised not to bowl, was a specialist batter in the WBBL, doesn't boast of like the greatest numbers, yet had such an interesting auction yesterday. Again, sort of shows you, right, the inequalities of the auction system itself. Like Danny Gibson takes home a lot more money than England captain Nat Silver Blunt, right, in this case. Again, just what do you make of the Danny Gibson bid itself that is happening between each of the franchisees, and do you think she can be that sort of an MVP come the season?
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting one. Particularly if I thought she was mainly picked on the idea that she might both bat and bowl. From that perspective, I think she's someone who can provide a lot of balance. I think that sort of a player is still very highly valued. Like in the WPL auction, we saw Pooja Vastrukar, despite coming off a long injury layover, still could be one of the more expensive picks, just on the promise that she can give you that value with both disciplines. So from that perspective, I could see it. But if she's injured, then that actually makes it more complicating. Um, I am curious to know the duration, the how long these contracts might be. Maybe they're picking her as someone who can. Oh, if it's just a 1 year, then that's a bit tricky. But yeah, it's definitely an interesting decision in that case. But she does have a certain X factor. I think she can bat here and there in the order, so it gives them some flexibility. So that may be one thing that they had in mind. Um, with and yeah, maybe she'll be fit to bowl. Who knows? But yeah, that's probably the biggest perspective there. Um, but again, with the case of all of them, just happy for the players that they got that much money. Um, Putting aside the tactics, would I have spent that much on her? Maybe not. But again, just can't help but feel happy for her that she's got that sum. And again, speaking of the auction system, again, one of the things that also comes up with the inequality is also where you are in the auction often influences how much money you get. So like if you have a very good player who shows up in set one versus set seven, you might end up getting very different salaries depending on where you end up. So that's also one thing that's um, a bit of an inequality with the auction system, as we were talking about on that topic as well. But yeah, it's definitely she was one of my expected auction per. One of the expected players expected to go for a good bit of money, but that much was a bit of a surprise.
Yeah, I think baseline we are entirely happy that she did end up earning a lot, and then a player who comes into that sort of caliber. I think England really trusts her, so hopefully she makes the most of these opportunities and can sort of make her way back into the team as well. And coming to another interesting point that I did want your thoughts on, Darshan, was the Indian presence itself, right? At the women's 100, we had Smriti and Jamie, already being pre-signed, and this auction there were 17 other players, right, who were shortlisted in that long list itself. And yeah, there were expectations that hey, we'd at least see like 3 4 more picked, but Richa Ghosh and Deepthi Sharma were picked up. Again, just what do you make of the Indian presence at the women's 100? And great to see, right, in spite of the WPL, the BCCI is still not restricting participation in these foreign leagues and will just do a world of good, right, for these players as they gear up for like more competitive cricket.
Absolutely, Neha. I think that's definitely a big. I'm very glad that they still allow participation in foreign leagues, because I think these are great platforms for people to, a lot of our players to, not only just keep themselves active playing cricket, but also with the T20 World Cup in mind, come playing happening in England. This is a great opportunity for them to actually play with some of the local players, with some of the local coaches, and get sort of familiar with the conditions, that some of the challenges they might have to face, maybe even some of the other the bowlers they might have to face in these conditions, or the batters they might have to face. So definitely, it's a great. I'm glad a lot of them registered. Unfortunately, that only the four of them will be taking part. Of course, all four are well deserving. Smriti, good to see her back. It's good to see Smriti back. I think signing her at that price was a bit of a steal. 90 lakh, 90,000 euro pounds was pretty, was a really good price for her. Richa, of course, I thought of. I had a feeling she might get a bid. Definitely a very useful batter, especially with some of the form she showed in the last WPL and the World Cup prior. She is definitely maturing into that real sort of like, not just someone who sort of like can slog at the back end, but really someone who can be that sort of dynamic batter at five, who can also adjust the tempo. So that's something she's slowly building herself into, and I think she will be a real asset to the Manchester Super Giants alongside Smriti actually. Deepthi we spoke about as well. I think I think from a bowling point of view, it's a very good pick. From the batting point of view, I think pairing her with Sutherland could be a bit of a problem for Sunrisers. Um, and yeah, Jemmy, of course, slotting back in almost exactly where she batted for Delhi actually in the past WPL, at four with Laura Wolfhard at three is the where I see her playing. And yeah, I think this is a great opportunity for her. I could even see her being a leader in that setup. I don't know if they've announced their captain yet. I'm not sure if she will be the captain, but I think she could be definitely one someone in that leadership group for sure. And that's another good experience for her to keep growing. Actually, I think Jamie is one of the few who's been playing a lot more leagues than compared to other players. I think she was the only Indian in the WBBL, and she's been playing here as well. So definitely good for her. I was hoping for another couple of names to maybe get signed, because I think a lot of them, for example, Shreyanka, Shika Pandey, had all registered at 15,000, which is I think quite a reasonable sum for them to get picked up. And which Indian player went unsold? I think there's a few. Yeah, I think Shika Pandey would have been an interesting one. A lot of people have. She's been doing a lot of globe trotting as well. She had an okay WPL, but she's also done a lot of work elsewhere. I think she's someone who could also be relied on to be another experienced head in that dugout. Can bowl all phases, lend a bit with the bat. Shreyanka Patil too, coming off of a slightly 50-50 WPL, but still someone who can lend value, as we saw she's done in the WCPL. Um, yeah, I mean, a few others maybe even like. I was surprised to see Charani in sort of the main auction set. That led me to believe that maybe someone was after her. She was in someone's plans. Same thing for Yastika Bhatia, but unfortunately wasn't to be. So unfortunate for them, but yeah, I think still I am happy for the four girls who got selected. Maybe as injury replacements if they're able to come in, maybe someone might get a chance. So yeah, let's see.
Yeah, honestly, fingers crossed. But I think all in all, we can agree that really happy to see at least the ones who are selected that they sort of make the most of this opportunity and pave the way, right, for other girls in the future as well. But Darshan, let's pivot our conversation to probably each team, right? This is something I was really, really looking forward to. I know it's eight franchises, there's a lot to talk about. But let's start with Birmingham Phoenix itself, right? Just look at their pre signings, right? You have Lauren Filer, you have Lucy Hamilton, Alice Capsey, and Ellie Sperry, right? Do you think again here Birmingham Phoenix sort of built their squad itself around the right kind of core? And just makes sense, right? Considering the variety that they have, it was actually a great approach.
I think it's a very good core. So you have Perry, someone who brings experience, and Capsy is very dynamic as well, a good option. And of course, Lucy Hamilton, I think at that price is also a very good pickup at just 35,000. A very nice pre-signing for someone who's got a very high potential moving forward. She made her test debut recently. She had a good. She made some decent opportunities with the WPL opportunity she got when Chanel Henry was injured. That one knock against RCB with the bat, actually, which is not really her known to be her primary suit. Maybe that's something that'll give her some confidence. Maybe it'll give the team's confidence to sort of give her opportunities that way. So maybe Birmingham will look at her that way. And Lauren Filer continues to be a bit of an X factor, right? Because of the pace she generates. I think if she can, I found her sometimes to be a bit wayward, but I hope if she can get that accuracy, and I think she could be a gun option. I think the Birmingham have done well to get her in there. So it's a nice core that they've built around. So they've got some good batting up there. Alice Capsey can slide sort of almost anywhere in the middle order, and then you have Lucy Hamilton and so two good seamers locked in. So it's definitely a good core to build on, and they've done a pretty decent job in setting that up.
Yeah, agreed. And yeah, guys, in the live chat, we are seeing your comments. Please keep it coming. Sanju, I think this is a new name. So, hey there, if you're new here, please do subscribe. The comment goes on to say Davina Perrin, right, was a great buy for Birmingham Phoenix. Sunrisers Leeds should have sort of retained her. Again, Darshan, what do you make of this, right? Investing in a young star like Davina Perrin, who's just had that sort of a breakthrough year, right? Did so well for Northern Superchargers, now Sunrisers Leeds. Do you think it was like a very long term move at the auction itself for Birmingham?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Definitely. I thought it was a really good, like an absolute steal at just 50,000. Particularly given the sort of the long term potential. I know she had a bit of a rough time at the WBBL right after the 100, but still, I think the quality she has is pretty amazing. She also had, I think, she was also part of England's under 19 World Cup squad last year. So definitely, she's doing all the she's gotten all the right places. Um, so I think at that price, especially, is a great pick. And the nice thing about the way that Birmingham Phoenix have set up is she can really sort of play her own game because you've got someone like a Perry, a Tammy Beaumont, and a Capsey, of course, to come. She's got a nice base, so she can just sort of go and do her thing, and the rest, and with the knowledge that the rest of the team can still find a way, even if she gets out early. So I'm hoping that that platform really gives her, just lets her really just go all out and go have fun. As for Sunrisers Leeds retaining her, I can't remember the exact rules if they were allowed to retain four players because they did retain. I think the maximum is three retentions and one external signing. I could be wrong on this, but because they did retain the three players, Kate Cross and of course the two Aussies, Lichfield and Sutherland. Um, but yeah, they did try. I believe they did try to bring her back. They did make a few bids, but again, one of the double-edged swords of the auction is when you come in that early. Either you can go for very big if teams are sure, but also if teams are not sure, then teams often will bid less, knowing that they have other names in mind. So that's probably something she fell a bit victim to, and to Birmingham's benefit, of course. So definitely a great pick over there for that.
Yeah, either way, I think Birmingham will be really happy with this purchase. Really adds a lot of value to their setup, right? Because just let's continue looking at their lineup. Now you have a mix of experience, right? You have the likes of Tammy Beaumont, you have Elise Perry there, this infusion of youth, Alice Capsey, Davina Perrin. I really feel like their batting lineup looks more or less sorted. You have Aneri Dirksen as well, right? I think that was just such a wonderful purchase in that way. I mean, yeah, just talk to us about that batting department, right? It bats pretty deep and it is looking quite solid, right, on paper.
Yeah, I think so. You've got obviously we spoke about we have Perry and Beaumont who can sort of steady the ship and adjust the tempo to us needed. I think at least Perry, especially from watching her in the WPL, has also shown that she is capable of upping the tempo. So she is actually capable of being the someone who can go hard as well when she needs to. So she can be that sort of dynamic batter there. You got Capsey, of course, who can, like we said, can sort of slide down wherever needs. You got Andre Dirksen, and don't forget Alana King also can whack it a bit as we saw as Pakistan unfortunately found out in the World Cup there. And yeah, I think it's a nice batting lineup. I'm looking forward to see where they put Cordelia Griffith. I think she will probably have to play because they need the extra batter in there. And yeah, I'm interested to see where they end up slotting her because I know Beaumont is usually an opener, usually bats in the top order. Perry usually bats in the top order, and you have Perrin, of course. So I'm looking forward to see how they use her. So, but yeah, I think it's a very well-rounded batting lineup. Um, does it scare me a whole lot? Maybe not, but I think it's a good utility lineup. Um, I think it'll get the job done. So yeah, I think it's a good team there.
Yeah, exuding a lot of like promise and confidence at the moment. But we'll have to see, if they can really adjust to the whole T20 template side of things. Just casting our attention to the bowling attack side of things. You obviously have Alana King and Lindsay Smith there. Arguably, right? Like spin is going to be their biggest strengths. But again, like Darshan, what are your thoughts on the bowling department at large? Like, do you like the way it's looking at the moment?
I think so. The spin looks nice. You have Lindsay Smith, obviously now made the move over from Northern Superchargers here. You've got Alana King. I thought was another very good pickup at base price. Capsey is one of those players again who's one of those all rounders who's a better bowler than I think than just looking at her might indicate. She's bowled. I think I remember she used to bowl at the death quite a bit in the WPL. Very handy there. You've also, yeah, I think it's a well-rounded lineup. Lauren Filer and Lucy Hamilton take the ball. You also have Andre Dirksen who can chip in. I'm not sure. And the one thing that's nice is also they're not set up to lean too heavily on Elise Perry's bowling. So that's one of the things, because I think, okay, she's struggled a bit with the ball in in the past year or so. So not relying on her too much is to Birmingham's benefit. They've also got Eva Gray, who's I think someone who be kind of would be pretty interesting. And yeah, I think it's a well set up team. So, but again, I think spin will probably be their strength with the two experienced spinners there. The fast bowling, I think, it's solid, but I think I think it's probably between spin and fast bowling. Fast bowling is probably the slightly weaker suit, but spin is probably where they'll thrive.
Yeah, because I was actually going to get to that next itself, right? When you just look at the overall complexion of the squad itself, Darshan, like if you just had to run us through a SWOT analysis, so to say, do you think like Birmingham Phoenix will sort of struggle with that, lack of having like a dominant strike pace attack? It's going to depend a lot on spin, and the batting too, right? Doesn't infuse like a lot of confidence of being that sort of a firework sort of a batting lineup itself. So again, if you just had to give us a rundown of the SWOT itself.
Yeah, I think it's like I said, we said pretty decent batting there. The bowling, I think, is okay. Again, like overall, it feels like a good like sort of utility team. It doesn't is very like nothing here makes me super nervous if I was in opposition. But at the same time, I think there's a lot of people in here. If they click together, if they get their tactics right, I think it's a very good unit that could definitely do pretty well. As for I am one thing that I was also wondering is who will be their designated keeper, because if I think their only two options are either Tammy Beaumont or Jemima Spence, excuse me. So, and I think Spence is just looking at some of the scorecards. I believe she opens in under 19s, so that could potentially mess with the team combinations a bit if they have to use her as an opener. So. They'll be hoping that Tammy Beaumont can take the gloves. I know she's done so previously, but I haven't seen her do it in the recent couple of years. So we'll have to see how that turns out. Um, but yeah, I think overall this team has potential. Yeah, it just comes down to the usage, I suppose. And yeah, they'll have to. I think I was also just looking at. I was just making some playing 11s yesterday evening, and I am curious to see if they go with the extra batter or would they go with Eva Gray as the extra bowling option. Um, yeah, they'll have to just work out that balance there. So that's probably just one thing to think about.
Yeah, definitely an interesting conundrum there, right? As to how they optimize the resources to build that ideal playing 11. But again, Darshan, not to put you on the spot itself about the construction of how that's going to look like. Let's move on to London Spirit, right? Again, quite the interesting auction they had. I think we were discussing this yesterday too. I just look at their pre-signings, right? You had Mahika Gaur, Charlie Dean, Marizan Kaap, Grace Harris retained as well. Again, do you think Spirit secured one of the like strongest pre-signed cores, and they were just heading into the auction with that sort of an advantage?
A very strong core for sure. Yeah, I think Grace Harris and Marzan Cap are two fantastic overs. Marzan Cap is always a fantastic signing. No matter, like I don't think there's a team in the world that would turn their noses up at Marzan Cap. So definitely a great pick for them. Grace Harris, of course, I think Grace Harris will be very pleased to be on Marzan Cap's team for a change. I think Marzan Cap has dismissed her more than any other bowler in the world. So definitely a great pickup there. And Charlie Dean, I think, will also return as captain, if I'm not wrong. And Mahika Gaur is also a nice signing there. Good left arm option with a new ball. So definitely a very good core that they started. And I think the auction that they had was also pretty top class, the way that they went about building this team. I think we'll probably speak more about that in just the coming seconds. But I think, yeah, the way that they've set it up, the purchases that they made have resulted in a really, really well balanced team there.
Yeah, already giving, I think, a lot of teams reasons to be worried about. Because just look at this, right? I think, again, the biggest deal for them was Deandra Doughton. Add Nadine de Klerk to the mix. Darshan, again, like just talking about London Spirit and the finishing power, right, that they sort of lacked in the previous seasons, being made up so beautifully by this duo itself. Yeah, thoughts on that?
Oh yeah, I was actually very excited to talk about this. Yeah, I think that that access that they have Grace Harris, DeAndre Dot, and Nadine de Klerk, very powerful uh, three batters there who can, if even one of them really gets a kick on, I think they can change the game all by themselves. All fantastic strikers and all in pretty good form coming into this. especially Nadine de Klerk and Harris, both a part of RCB's title-winning WPL team, both in good touch. And around them, you also still have a pretty good set of batters. You have an Amy Jones up there who can, on her day, also be quite destructive. You have the option of a Stair Callis or a Serene Smale to come in at three. One of them, I think, Serene Smale, I would personally, I'm starting with Callis here because I think she's had a good time with Birmingham Phoenix previously, but they also have a good backup for her in Stair Callis. And even Marie Kelly potentially as another batting option. So they've got, and of course, the middle order, Dottin, absolute gun with the bat. You have Marizan Cap, who can be that sort of dynamic player. Also a good power hitter herself if she gets in the groove, but she can be sort of that dynamic batter who can guide the middle order through. Nadine de Klerk, of course, we know how good Nadine de Klerk is. And also Charis Pavali, another left arm spinning all rounder. Also, I'm told can be quite lethal with the bat as well. And of course, I have Lucy Higham in their 11, the uncapped spinner, also very capable with the bat. Apparently, Mahika Gaur also can bat a little bit. So yeah, all in all, I think it's they bat quite deep, and I think it's I think it would be a very scary batting lineup to face come the summer.
Yeah, a beautifully constructed squad in that regard. I think unknown nobody also going on to point that the best part of London Spirit is that they studied the format for a month before, planning for the auction. Really does reflect, right, in some of the purchases that they did end up doing. And I'm glad actually you spoke about the batting department and how beautifully that is shaping up. But let's talk about the bowling strength itself, right? I think it's largely going to hinge on the likes of Charlie Dean. You have Marizan Karp as well. But overall, Darshan, like, how does that bowling attack shape up for you, and happy with how it's looking?
I am quite happy. I think if I was a London Spirit fan, I would be quite happy. I think Cap and Mahika Gaur is a good new ball opening duo. And then on the others, and then with the spin, I think they've built a very good spin attack. They've obviously got Charlie Dean already, but they've also got Karis Pavley, who's a very good left arm option. I actually had the privilege of watching her bowl in the stadium when she came to Ireland a couple of years ago. She was quite difficult to pick for the Irish batters, so it definitely a very good signing. Lucy Higham is another one. She was a part of the Northern Superchargers title-winning team last year. Someone who's apparently quite good at flighting the ball, getting it to turn. I have to credit Jeet there and others, one of our friends for sharing that bit of info. So definitely a good bowler there. I am curious to see if she will play alongside Charlie D. Because they're both off spinners. I wonder if they'll go with just one or the other. I think they would benefit from going with both. That might be something they could try. Then you've also got Josie Groves, a leg spinner, someone again who's highly talked about. So they've got a very complete spin attack. And with the fast bowling, I think that's where they're all round. That's where I think the balance with their all rounders is very useful. You've got Nadine de Klerk, who can also bowl through the middle and at the death, very accurate. And you've also got Dottin, who can chip in with overs here and there. So you've got, I think the fast bowling will still mostly be carried by Marizan Kapp, but you've also got good support for her through with these all rounders and of course with Mahika Gaur. So again, like with the case of Birmingham Phoenix, I think if you had to pick one of the two, I think their spin bowling is probably, at least on paper, is slightly more evenly distributed. But I think their fast bowling is also can be quite lethal, but it probably hinges a bit on Marizan Kapp doing well. It's probably going to be that sort of spearhead that the rest of the bowling attack rely on. But yeah, overall, can't complain. I think it's a fantastic team. I think they've done a very good job. I think, I think John Lewis and co will be very, very happy come summer.
Yeah, agreed. And I think it's going to be very difficult for a lot of us, right, who have been so used to seeing Marizan Cup with her oval invincible colors. Now, my London, to be playing for London Spirit itself. But again, as you rightly said, Marizan Cup is going to be that linchpin in that bowling side of things. I know nobody also goes on to probably ask or just say this, that for London Spirit, Charlie Dean's captaincy is main. How she does will sort of dictate how the team goes. Again, Darshan, what do you make of her captaincy from last season itself? Right, it was sort of like a last minute thing. Heather Knight was injured, and that's how Charlie Dean had to step in. And they sort of wanted to persist with her going ahead. Heather Knight takes in a very different sort of a role, right, in that setup itself. So again, Charlie Dean, the captain, something you're buying into?
Sure, why not? I couldn't follow her too closely this over the last 100, but I think she was actually, I remember when Heather Knight stepped down, she was actually speaking publicly about aspiring for English captaincy, and I don't think you say something like that without at least the confidence to go for the job. So, and I think so I think this definitely, if she believes in it enough, I think she clearly believes in her leadership ability, so that's a good thing. Unfortunately, I don't think London did super well last year, unfortunately, in the points table sense of things. But yeah, I think she could be a very good captain, and so hopefully she kicks on. Um, yeah, so we'll have to see how she goes about it, and she'll have a good leadership group around her as well. So Cap obviously comes with a lot of experience. Dottin comes with a whole lot of experience, and yeah, of course, I think you've got likes of Amy Jones, who's been a capped international for a while, uh, basically someone, and Grace Harris, of course, who's been around for a while, to just sort of put an arm around her just to help her walk through things, and. And the RCB coaching, sorry, London Spirit, sorry, slip of the tongue there. So the London Spirit coaching group is also quite good. They've got quite a supportive. You have Mobobat there. You have they've got a good support structure there. Malo is someone that people have. Most players who have worked with him have always spoken very highly of him. So they've got a good system. And he would have actually worked with Charlie Dean for the brief time she was at RCB back in 2025. So I think there'll be an existing relationship there. So she's got a good support system. Of course, it'll come down to her at the end. But yeah, we'll see how she goes. Yeah, we'll have to see how she goes.
Yeah, and I think in our live chat as well, right? Like there were a little bit of concerns about the death bowling side of things. Sanju also going on to say London Spirit lacks depth in fast bowling as well. Darshan, again, your 2 cents on this. Like, do you somewhere think that Marzan Cup again, right, has been blowing like hot and cold internationally as well? Workload management coming into play and hasn't looked like her lethal best, but the 100 has always seen a very different version of her. So again, do you think like the fast bowling might be a concern for London Spirit somewhere, maybe?
Yeah, like we spoke about, I think the fast bowling is perhaps a little bit more hinged on her, on the one player that is Marizan Cap than the spin aspect. Um, because I think she's the only one who can, I think, bowl, who's she gives power play and she could give you back in bowling, middle overs bowling. If you take her out of the equation, then they might struggle a bit with the new ball. They do still have Nadine Leclerc, so it's not the end of the world, but will definitely be a huge loss to them if Marasan Cup is not in peak form. But she did have a great WPL. I think she was for the majority of the tournament she was going sub run a ball economy rate wise, which I think is pretty for how given the tournament was fairly high scoring. I think it's pretty next level bowling. So hopefully, if she can bring that over here to Lords, it'll be good. But yeah, I think I do agree with that. Maybe if if not her, then I think the fast bowling could have a few problems. But but again, Marizan Cap is usually a very bankable bet. So if she goes well, then I think London Spirit will have no problems.
Yeah, definitely. I think they will depend largely on her in the fast bowling stocks itself. Hopefully, she does end up turning up well. And I know our live chat is sort of prompting us to move on to our next team in Southern Bree. But one last bit, Darshan. Again, if you had to do like an overall SWOT analysis for London Spirit, they are obviously going to rely heavily on their overseas match winners. There are a lot of domestic stars who have done well. Like people who've been following like the domestic side of things well will know that these are players who can be banked upon and dependent. But just overall, if you had to give us a rundown on the SWOT, how does that look like?
Yeah, so strengths like we spoke about, I think their batting and spin are both top tier. I think they'll be pretty difficult to challenge in those respects. The fast bowling again, maybe if Marizan, if assuming Marizan Cap is a good form, that's also pretty good. So yeah, they just have to think about really excuse me. So if Marzan Cup is not fit, I think that's where the fast bowling becomes a bit of an issue because then your new ball bowling, I think, could struggle a bit, and then maybe because and then you might have to use your spinners a bit more cleverly to try and pull things back. So that could be a bit of an issue. Um, they also have, I think, their batting depth is also pretty good, is also pretty solid in terms of. But the only thing is, past Nadine de Klerk, you have a lot of players who might be more comfortable as number eights. You have a Charis Pavali, Charlie Dean, players who might, so maybe one of them might be batting a bit high if they're to play both Lucy Hickam and Charlie Dean. But again, I think if one of them steps up well, I think you're good to go. And of course, if you always have the option to bring in someone like a Marie Kelly as if you need batting cover, and you still have enough spin support, anyways. So yeah, I'd say they're not too bad, but probably a few things that might come into play depending on how player form shows up. But overall, yeah, like I said at the start, London Spirit have done a really good job. I think that's a very good team going into it. I am maybe a tiny bit biased just because of the RCB management in place there, but at the same time, yeah, just completely impartially, I think it's a very good team.
Yeah, they actually have done a really good job. Just a few concluding thoughts on this. Unknown Nobody said Heather Knight will be there at the foundry, just overseeing a lot of things. And yeah, there's still the wildcard choice for London Spirit. We'll be interested to see what is the kind of option that they want to go in for, right? We have another comment again that says, I'm looking forward to seeing Mahika Gaur in London Spirit, right? Again, with the Women's T20 World Cup, fast approaching. Uh, it would be great, right, if Maika Gaur can make the most of her opportunities. Unfortunately, this is, scheduled like probably after that, so won't really get to see her make a statement and then stake a claim in that side. But hopefully, Maika Gaur puts in a good show at the 100, so at least in the future, she can be an asset for England. But yeah, moving on to Southern Brave, because we have one comment that says, hey, talk about Southern Brave as well. Wow. I mean, Jamie Rodriguez, you have Lauren Bell, Maya Bougier, and Laura Wolfart, right? I mean, these are three signings that one would only dream of. Again, do you think Brave here really locked in like a strong foundation, and these are again bankable players, right?
Oh, absolutely, Dan. So I think they've secured three wonderful players. Maya Bushi is a very handy batter with a very high ceiling moving forward, and of course Laura Wolfart is Laura Wolfart. I think nothing more needs to be said there for her quality. Jemmy, of course, again another who's coming off a very successful campaign at the WPL. Also, like we mentioned, has a good leadership presence in the team, and someone who definitely will be highly respected in that lineup. Um, and of course, another last but certainly not least is Lauren Bell. I believe she's the most one of either the joint or the most expensive preseason signing at £140,000. And what a season she had in the WPL! I think single handedly did so much damage with the ball, and I think Southern Brave were more than happy to keep her back in. Definitely a fantastic player, and I think they'll be hoping she has similar kinds of success for in these new colors here. Um, I think yeah. So they've got a very very solid base, and they've got some pretty good picks in there as well to go with it.
Yeah, agree with you there, because as we continue discussing the squad itself, Darshan, I think one name that someone had brought up in our live chat as well was that of Tilly Corteen Coleman itself, right? She's such a revelation last season and has been doing well consistently, right, in the domestic side of things. Again, bringing her back to this setup, do you think it was probably one of the boldest auction investments that they could have done?
Definitely very bold. Hundred just that sort of that price tag of 105,000 is pretty big, especially for an uncapped player. Quite a sizable. She's uncapped, I believe. Yes. So quite a sizable sum there. Yeah. So definitely, and I think it is very good because she lends us a lot of quality to that spin attack, especially when you have someone like a Sophie Molyneux also in the team. I think that spin lineup is just shaping as something very very lethal, and having her in there, I think it's definitely a punt at that price tag, but I think it's a very good punt just because I think the sort of support the lineup she'll have around her in terms of spin bowling quality, I think just makes it. I think she'll have a very. I think makes it very conducive for her to have a very good season.
Yeah, and I think seeing her sort of bowl in tandem with Sophie Molyneux will be just, stuff of dream. Hopefully they can, like rub off their influence on each other really well. And another name that I did want to get your thoughts on was Lizelle Lee itself, right? Just her rise in world cricket. I mean, we're used to seeing her in South African colours, but after, her being abandoned by her nationality, and then, then playing for Australia domestically across leagues and all of that. Again, how impactful do you think Lizelle Lee will be, right? And providing those explosive starts. We loved what we saw of her in the WPL. And in the WBBL, she's been doing really well. But now in the 100 too, right? Just going to add so much of flavor.
Oh, definitely. I think, yeah, the power hitting she brings. She's such a deadly. She's really quite a deadly starter up there. I think Maya Boucher will be a good opening partner for her as well. So definitely, yeah, very high quality opener. And yeah, but she also gives them the gloves, the keeper option. So that also takes one thing off of their minds there. So yeah, I think, and again, like we said with Davina Perrin, I think she's got a very stable contingent of batters coming below her that gives her the freedom to just really go at it and give them those good starts with the bat. So yeah, fantastic pick. Yeah, very yeah, and at base price too, I thought was a very very good. It was a very smart pick up there.
Yeah, and I think Unknown Nobody goes on to point here in the chat that Lizelle Lee will be on the bench, because it does eventually boil down to, what's the kind of combination that they want to go for. Unknown Nobody also adds here that's just three overseas in the team only, right? I thought it was actually four, but
I
might
think
have.
it's four. Yeah. I
Yeah.
go on, Neha. Sorry.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say, like, I thought it was four, so might need a correction on that itself. But at large too, Darshan, like, even if
Yeah.
Lizelle is like on the bench, like how do you see that batting department shape, right? Because I really thought Lizelle was going to be like a sure shot in that playing 11, considering she would really, like complement Maya Bujia at the other end well. So yeah, how do you see that batting department shape?
Yeah. I think they do need her because I feel like their batting could be a bit fragile post the top four if they um, it's going to be pretty fragile anyways. So they might as well keep the batting a little bit more solid up top, and then I think they can afford. I think it'd probably be between Lizelle and Sophie Molyneux, and I think if I had to pick between the two, it's obviously a very very difficult decision, but I there's two things that complicate it. First, their backup Bex Odgers is also, I think, a top order wicketkeeper batter, so she would be the wicketkeeper if Lizelle doesn't play. That would be a better like for like swap. I don't think they have an easy like for like swap for Sophie Molyneux, so that's one complication. But on the other hand, I think dropping Molyneux, they do have spin quality even without Molyneux. They have Sarah Glenn there, you have Tilly Courtney Coleman, and yeah, so I think you still have that spin quality even without Molyneux. So I think if they had to lose one player, I think Molyneux is probably the one that will hurt them less than losing Lizelle. But on the flip side, from a squad composition point of view, the like for like swap is much easier if you drop Lizelle. So it's a definitely bit complicating. But yeah, personally, I would probably drop Molyneux. Just um, very very tough call, but I think that's probably what. Just because I think you have the two spinners there, um, so you could probably get by a little bit easier.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be a very tough decision for them to make those, Darshan. My next point was going to be on the bowling side of things, right? Again, Sophie Molyneux, Sarah Glenn gives them a really strong spin department. We spoke about Tilly Corteen Coleman as well. Issy Wong too, right? Someone who really made the most of a platform like the 100, then suddenly, had this decline in form, wasn't really used well by John Lewis, but is sort of, trying to find her way back up. So again, just your 2 cents on that bowling department and just looking very interesting there.
Yeah, I'm very happy for Izzy Wong. Again, she is very very high quality when she gets it right. She was actually in that same squad that toured Ireland as well. So in that first game, especially, I think she was basically breathing fire. Nobody could put batter on her. Basically, it was pretty amazing. She didn't do quite as well in the second game, unfortunately, but still, very very high quality bowler. We've seen what she can do even in the WPL. She was able to trouble even like very very high quality internationals at that level. So definitely I'm very glad she's got this paycheck. I think definitely she can add a lot to this lineup, bowling alongside Lauren Bell. I'm interested to see what phase she might be used in because I think she's more of a. I'm wondering should be used more as a power play bowler or should be used more of like that middle overs enforcer because she does hit quite high speeds. So I am curious to see what that usage will be. But yeah, I think she's. I'm very very glad that she's in here. She also adds batting depth to them now because now you have both Sarah Glenn and Izzy Wong who also lend who can also bat a bit. So that gives them a little bit of sort of a bit of extra depth and a little bit of leg room with their batting, especially given that I feel that their 5, 6, 7 could be a bit fragile. I think this is something that's very 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 useful to have.
Yeah, definitely. And I think just to give a clarification, like unknown nobody confirms it for us that it's four overseas players in the team itself. Like even in the auction, right? You had an option of picking up to four overseas players, and I think in the playing 11 too, you can accommodate that pretty similar to the WPL rule, where you can also have like an associate player. Wish the 100 had that rule, but yeah, I think discussion for another day in that way. But overall, too, right? Just looking at how the team is shaping again, Darshan, if you had to give us like an overall SWOT or a run through, like I really think Braves' like biggest strength is probably their batting depth itself. I know you did mention it's like slightly fragile, maybe not in comparison to other teams. It's not that great, but like that middle overs control phase, like how do you see that shape and even just the bowling side of things, right? Looking a little shaky there.
Yeah, yeah, the top four that they have is quite excellent. I'm assuming we can do is four overseas. I think because I think they're yeah I think it's four allowed. So in that yeah, the top four is very strong. You have Lizelle who can really go hammer and tongs, and you have the three batters there who can really adjust their tempo as needed, and three batters who you would on a lot of days back to bat through the innings and get you to whatever. And if they do that, then I think the sort of batting that they have is okay. You have a lot of players who can sort of walk with them and just basically sort of bat with the whoever's there at the other end. But if they were to lose two or three up front early, then I feel like that 5, 6, 7 could become quite fragile. Maybe could be squished a little bit. But they do still have the good thing is they do actually have a little bit of a cushion with the depth. So you do still have a Sarah Glenn to come at 8. You do still have an Izzy Wong to come at 9. So they I don't know if I see a match winner with the bat past the top four, but they do still have players who can contribute. So that's something that they can still work with. I don't think it's not ideal perhaps, but it's something they can work with there. So, and with the ball, I think, yeah, again, the spin is quite strong. The fast bowling again could be maybe a bit hit or miss. I think they um, excuse me, I'm looking to see maybe yeah, I think they have the two fast bowlers in Lizelle and sorry, excuse me, in Lauren Bell and Issy Wong. Sorry, slip of the tongue there. The other thing that might be a bit concerning is I'm not really seeing a very reputed fifth or sixth or seventh bowling option in this team. So you have the five excellent bowlers, the three good spinners and the two fast bowlers. But if someone goes under the pump, I don't know if I really see a top notch fifth or sixth option there. So that's probably something that could be a bit of an issue. Um, yeah, we'll see how they work around the resources. If they have a few good individual performances with the bat and the ball, I think the rest of the team is good enough to carry them. So it's good enough to work with them. So it's a good team. Maybe not the best team, but I think there's still there's enough quality at either end, I think, to get them pretty far.
Yeah, I think when we look at the top order itself, right, looks pretty exciting. On more days, they would expect that top order to fire because the middle order and that lower middle order looks a little shaky. Although there is depth, it still seems a little sus in that way. Sanju also going on to say having Anya Shrafsul as the bowling coach will help. Issy Wong really would help, right? That kind of mentorship coming in from her would be very handy for someone like Issy Wong who's trying to find her way back in. Sportsman also goes on to say it feels like an old SRH sort of a team itself. Not sure which timeline or era we're looking at, but Sportsman, yeah, please do confirm it for us. Unknown Nobody also goes on to add that Sarah Glenn, Tilly, Cortine Coleman, Sophie, Issy, Bell are going to be those five bowlers, right? Which yeah, I think on paper does really look good. Hopefully, they all collectively don't have like an off day. And Lauren Bell, to her credit too, right, has just been having this dream couple of months, so to say. And if she can just, extend that vein of form for Southern Brave till then, it would be like great stuff. But yeah, I mean, that does, conclude our discussion on Southern Brave, bringing us to our next team, Manchester Super Giants, right? I think before even the auction itself, they were already in the news for their whole rebranding, the logo thing, a lot of people being just so like unhappy about it. But talking about fun things, just look at their pre signings, right? You have Meg Lanning, Smriti Mandana, Sophie Eccleston. My word, I think this has to be the strongest, pre-signed core in the league itself, and not a lot to complain there, right?
Yeah, absolutely not. Yeah, I think it's a very, very good top three signings. Smriti Mandana, again, what a year she's been having. Good World Cup, good WPL, title winning captain with what a performance in the final. So Smriti Mandana, fantastic signing. Meg Lanning, too, I think, again, you can never say no to Meg Lanning as a leader. And even Meg Lanning, the batter, has been as probably not the best WPL, but still a very, very solid performer. She had one insane knock in the last WBBL, I think, where she had a really good century. And yeah, Sophie Eccleston, probably the one of the best bowlers in the world in this format. And I think, yeah, the rest of the squad they've also built around that, I think, is pretty high quality as well. So, yeah, I think very little to complain about for Manchester.
Yeah, agreed with you there. And Sanju also going on to say that Manchester Super Giants look like the strongest team, right? A team full of match winners in that regard. I mean, let's talk about the signing of Richa Ghosh itself, right? Somewhere do you think they probably have solved their whole finishing role conundrum itself? I think there was this earlier comment, Darshan, that I'll just probably scroll up a little bit to find it. Yeah, it was a question from Asta actually way earlier about can Richard Ghosh actually break into this playing 11 with Mooney, Lanning, and Mandana being there, considering the fourth overseas slot might be needed for a bowling option. So, again, yeah, talk to us about the purchase itself and do you see her slot immediately?
Yeah, I'm assuming that we have four overseas picks available. If that's the case, yeah, I think she's an easy slot in because again, you also get the wicket keeper covered there. Because if you don't play Richa Ghosh, you have to play Nat Wraith. I think who's probably not as then I don't think you have the same finishing quality there with the bat, even though she's probably a very good keeper. So yeah, I think that's so definitely I think Richa is a very appealing option there. Like we spoke about at the beginning, I just think she's grown into not just being a very good sort of end overs hitter, but someone who can be very also adjust her tempo according to the situation, play good shots, and like really set herself up for a good finish at the end. Yeah, we saw that in that she had that one knock in the WPL against Mumbai Indians where she took RCB from I think 40 for 4 in the power play to almost giving Mumbai a scare defending 199. So definitely she's adjusted. She's got some quality there. And of course, against South Africa in the World Cup, we don't need to talk about that knock. So she's definitely someone I think could be very useful at five for them, and yeah, someone who they can set the game up very well for at the back end. And yeah, she gives them a lot of finishing power at the back end, so that's definitely something that helps. And yeah, it's looking like a very good batting lineup there overall. You have obviously your the two overseas. Megan's pretty up top. I think Grace Scrivens and Paige Schofield are very good for that top order as well. Richa, maybe a Joanne Gardner in the middle there, and then Eccleston can just sort of clean up the end of the innings. And Catherine Bryce, of course, can sort of be floated up as needed as that sort of like that maybe collapse arrestor batter. And I had Maddie Villiers in my team just for the second spinner. She's also another capable hitter as well. But you can also replace her with Rihanna McDonald Gay. So yeah, very good batting depth. I think a lot of good hitting power, and yeah, I think they have very good batting all the way until eight. I think so. It's definitely very they've done a plus job on the batting depth.
Yeah, actually, my next question was going to be about the batting department itself, right? There's just so many options there, and young players, right, from the domestic setup itself who have been scouted, and the already existing options that they have. So, we'll probably not talk about that batting side of things, but again, in the bowling thing, right? Like, how do you look at it, right? Sophie Eccleston obviously is going to be like massively important in that lineup. Sanju also goes on to point that Grace Ballinger too, right? I think whatever we saw of her last season just gave us so many reasons to be excited about. You have Maitland Brown as well, Maddie Villiers, you have Raina McDonald. Again, this is me just like listing names, but these are names, right, that come in with that sort of a reputation of being able to create that sort of an impact. Again, over to you. What do you make of this bowling lineup?
Yeah, it's the fast bowling looks very very impressive. So you have Catherine Bryce, Grace Ballinger, and Maitland Brown, who can all make a lot of impact with the new ball. And of course, this is with Rihanna McDonald Gay not in the main 11. Yeah, of course, she can always come in as well in place of Maddie Villiers. So definitely a very very good pace quarter, especially for the new ball. I think they could easily have oppositions 2-3 down almost every game. Very very high quality. The spin, I think, again, you are reliant a little bit more on Eccleston. I don't think they really have a quality second spinner. So that's why I would start with Maddie Villiers there, just so you have a second off spin option there, just to work through the middle overs there. And yeah, I think it's a very fine bowling lineup. The only thing that I will, from a squad balance point of view, is I don't think they have anyone in their top five who can really bowl. Uh, I don't think any of them. I could be wrong about Paige. I don't think Paige Schofield bowls either. Joanne Gardner could, I think, roll her arm a bit, so you do have maybe an option there, but I don't think she's bowled quite as much in the hundred. So I think you might be stuck using your five bowlers most of the time. So that could be a bit of an issue if one of them goes for runs. But most days it's hard to see this bowling lineup having too many bad days. So hopefully that's not something that comes into play too often. But maybe one more all rounder in there could have been handy. The purchase of Madeline Brown was a bit of an interesting one. Quite an uncapped Aussie bowler. Bit of a definitely quality from. So I was looking up some of her stuff from Sydney Sixers. She's definitely high quality. But it was interesting because there were probably more experienced names available for just from overseas fast bowlers, and also there were also potentially a lot of all round names available that might have gone for in that slot. So that was an interesting pickup. But at the same time, yeah, I think it works pretty well. Uh, so they did actually pay quite a premium for her. They spent 40,000 on her despite a base price of 50. So that's I think over twice her base price. So definitely a good day for her, but definitely a very interesting pickup there. So yeah, but yeah, all round I still think they have a very good bowling line, very lethal in the power play. Might need to think a little bit about how they work that spin attack.
Yeah, agreed with you there. And even the presence of someone like a Catherine Bryce, too, right? I think she provides that sort of an all round balance that really augurs well for them. And one last bit, Darshan, before we move on to our next team, about again, just an overall SWOT itself, right? Again, Manchester Super Giants, they are loaded with star power. There's no two ways of looking at it, but slightly thin, right? Again, in the bowling department. Like, this is again a largely untested sort of a unit. So, yeah, like, what are your impressions just, on the SWOT side of things?
Yeah, like we said again, like pretty good with the new ball. I think Ballinger can bowl with the new ball. You have Bryce, who's obviously excellent with the new ball, and Maitland Brown, who can also chip in with that. Again, there could be a bit of inexperience, like you said. Again, I think Ballinger and Brown in particular are a bit new. Bryce has got a bit more international experience, but still, these two might be a bit new to the thing. Eccleston, I think, with the spin is a pretty good pickup. She didn't have the best of WPLs, but hopefully that turns around here when she comes back to home conditions. But yeah, I think there's maybe again this is maybe where they might be missing a good fifth bowler. So you will be leaning heavily on these guys to bowl 4 overs each every time, and that might put a bit of pressure on them. So that's maybe where a sixth bowling option could have been useful. Um, I don't know how many overs you can count on Joanne Gardner to deliver at this stage. That could change. Maybe she improves her bowling before the season, but that's just something that they might worry about a little bit there. Um, yeah, but they do have a very good fast bowling backup there in Rihanna McDonald Gay. So you could even potentially go with just the 3 overseas and bring in Rihanna McDonald Gay, who's a bit more experienced, at least even though she's a bit new herself, a little bit more experience at the international level. So that's someone who could also help maybe accommodate for that. But yeah, I think it's that. So could be a bit fifth, could be caught up in a bit of a bad place if one or two of their bowlers don't fire consistently. But I think they've at least set themselves up fairly well, where they have a pretty good shot with the ball as well. Especially if they make early inroads in the power play.
Yeah, and I think their batting will also, sort of make up for a lot of the deficits that they might sort of encounter with their bowling attack side of things. But yeah, Manchester Super Giants, in spite of all the criticism that has been levied on them, I think still had like a way more than decent auction. And with Meg Lanning at the helm, right, we can expect some miracles in that way. But moving on to our next team, My London. I know it's so weird to say, like, in my mind, I'm like, Am I London? But, like, they sort of wanted to be used as My London itself. You can see a very strong Mumbai Indians score there, right? You have Hayley Matthews, Amelia Kerr, and Danny Wyatt Hodge there being retained. Again, Darshan, Am I London? Sorry, My London. Do you think they have, like, the strongest, like, all round core? Like, it's a very multi dimensional core that they've sort of, gone for. And makes sense to you in the larger scheme of things?
Oh yeah, fantastic. You can rarely go wrong when you have Amelia Kerr and Haley Matthews. They're basically four players in themselves. When they have a good day, when they have good days, they give you 4 overs each with the ball, and they give you impact with the bat. So really can't complain there. Danny White Hodge is also a nice pickup there. I am surprised they were able to pull her over from Southern Brave, because I know she's been a veteran there for a while. So definitely it was a big thing pulling them over. A bit unfortunate for them they couldn't pull back Marizan Cap, but I don't think they were allowed to sign 3 overseas anyways. So a bit unfortunate there, but yeah, but still I think it's a very good setup. Uh, and yeah, I think it's yeah. I'm surprised they didn't go for a fourth overseas or a fourth retention or signing. Maybe there were a few names. There were probably a few names there in the uh, excuse me, from Oval Invincibles that they maybe could have gone for. Maybe Capsy or someone they could have tried to bring in as a fourth attention. So I'm surprised they didn't go for four, because normally Mumbai's or my sides like across the globe, they're generally the ones that go with the full four. They usually, or whenever they're given a chance to retain, they go with as many retentions as they're allowed to. So right from back in the early days of the IPL. So that was an interesting one, but yeah, I still think they've done pretty well with that core that they've got.
Yeah, and I think interesting additions also have to be that of Chanel Henry and Nicola Carey itself, right? Nicola Carey again brings in that sort of an MI flavor with her. What do you make of these purchases at large, Darshan? Because Sanju also goes on to mention in the chat that, hey, Nick Carey is a good pick for My London. And lately, she has been doing so well. Just look at her year, like in the past year, right? Did well for Hobart Hurricanes, for Northern Superchargers, erstwhile. I'll have to use the word erstwhile there. But again, a solid pick in this duo.
Fantastic picks, both of them. I think so. Both of them lend them. They know that Haley Matthews and Danny White Hodge, even Amelia Kerr to some extent, are all top order players who do well this. So they have two now fantastic all rounders who can manage things in the middle. So that gives them a bit of freedom to use even someone like Akira Chatri a little bit, sort of in maybe at 3 or 4, to just sort of go basically maybe just to play with some freedom, knowing that you have these players to come down and sort of give you to make things up at the end. And of course, Chanel Henry, the sort of firepower she brings with the bat is pretty next level. Is some of the best in the world. So definitely that's a fantastic pick. And Nicola Carey as well, a very dynamic batter, very scrappy in the middle orders. May not have the raw power that someone like a Chanel Henry has, but still knows how to find gaps, how to make things happen, and can really help with all these. She did so many recovery jobs for Mumbai Indians in the last WPL as well. So it gives them a lot of depth with this, and even a lot of their other batting picks sort of are quite well structured to the point where I would actually even say they could use Amelia Kerr more as a floater than as a necessary bat in the top order. So definitely a top marks there. I think it's a very well established batting lineup.
Yeah, and I think just continuing to look at the squad itself, Darshan, I think we can really laud them for the kind of domestic picks that they went for, right? Kira Chatli recently announced as the captain too, right, for Surrey, the domestic side of things. You have Kirsty Gordon as well, Holly Armitage and Alexa Stonehouse, who have just, constantly been building that reputation for them in the domestic side of things. Again, happy with these purchases. Again, I just took a few names. There's a lot more obviously there, but these are again names that you would depend on to do well, no?
Oh, for sure. I think Alexa Stonehouse is was just looking at some clips, has done pretty amazing in the last couple of seasons. Very good left arm fast. Mumbai love their left arm fast bowlers, so that's definitely a very good pickup for them. And they actually have a very good pair there that I'm excited to see. You have Alexa Stonehouse and Tara Doris both there as the left arm seam options. I suspect they'll go with Chanel Henry and Alexa Stonehouse with the new ball. Maybe Tara Norris comes in as that first change option. So they've got a very decent seam trio up top there. And of course, Nick Carey can also chip in where needed. So that's a very good seam attack. And with the spin, of course, you have Christy Gordon there, and then you also have you have Haley Matthews and Amelia Kerr coming in as those options again, showing the value that they give as all round players. So yeah, so again, a very complete bowling lineup as well. Um, the only question I might have is again, you have to look carefully at Haley Matthews' form, and because I feel like she didn't look quite as good coming back from injury. I don't think she's really fully kicked on yet since her surgery that made her miss the last WBBL. So she was out for quite a bit. But if she kicks on, there's still a good bit of time for the hundreds, so she has plenty of time to kick on. And if she does, that's hard to stop this sort of team.
Yeah, and I think talking in our chat as well, about team combinations, Sportsfan goes on to sort of speculate. All four can play, right? You have Matthews, Kerr, Carey, and Henry. In all likelihood, I think this is the kind of overseas combination that they would sort of be inclined to go with. But again, Darshan, probably we can, conclude with this bit on My London itself. And look at the squad itself, right? The overall observation is that it has a very heavy all-round presence, right? There's no two ways of looking at it, which offers its own like flexibility and also brings in a lot of questions about how will they go about with that playing 11 composition itself. So again, do you think that biggest strength is that they have so much of all round variety, but the bigger weakness could be the lack of specialist bowlers that eventually hopefully doesn't come to bite them back?
I I don't think it should hit them too hard because again, like Amelia Kerr, for example, is someone who on average will give you 4 overs each game. Chanel Henry on average is someone who will probably give you at least 3, if not 4 overs per game. Uh, Haley Matthews should give you 4 overs per game, and then you have Nick Carey, who's also a very competent bowler. So they're all very good bowlers. They're not relying on sort of bits and pieces all rounders. They are very high quality all rounders. So I think that's not too much of an issue. Um, they're domestic bowlers. Maybe a tad green, but at the same time, they're still some of the best under domestic players you can find. I think Alexa Stonehouse has been spoken very highly in a lot of circles. Christy Gordon's pretty high quality, and Tara Norris, of course, is another very good high quality player. So I think it's still a very good looking lineup. So even though, yeah, I do agree, maybe they're missing someone like maybe one more experienced bowler to maybe go in that with the ball just to sort of marshal the rest of the bowlers. Maybe they're missing that, but at the same time, I think their all rounders are more than capable enough to fill those gaps. Um, so I think they're probably still in very good shape, but yeah, time will tell. Again, like we mentioned, Haley Matthews' form is going to be very important because she just sets things up very well. Um, yeah, so I'm excited to see how that plans out.
Yeah, agree with you on that. Again, time will tell, right, how this team really does fare. But at least, like, an eye test gives us a good idea that, hey, they've gone with some good players, and you can see that MI flavor really come through. But yeah, let's move on to our next team, Sunrisers Leeds, right? Again, a very rebranded team, the likes of Amber Sutherland, Phoebe Litchfield, Kate Cross. They've been retained, right? Again, did Sunrisers sort of build around the right core? Because when you look at Northern Superchargers, erstwhile, again, I use that word here. Uh, I mean, these were like match winners for you, so it sort of made sense, right? To build around them itself.
Oh, absolutely. I think three fantastic signings: Litchfield, Sutherland, both two of the best internationally. Any team would be very both would be very both would make would probably start in any team in any league in the world, um, and both also contributed to their title last year. So both very foreseeable retentions. Um, it was a bit unfortunate they couldn't keep Georgia Wareham, but again I don't think they're allowed to keep three overseas. So unfortunately it is what it is. Same thing for Nick Carey as well. Um, Kate Cross again a pretty solid signing, especially at that 50 lakh price tag. I think for the experience, 50 sorry, keep saying lakh 50,000 price tag, the experience she brings is quite substantial. Um, so that's again a pretty good good shout. I am again with the case of MI London. I am surprised they didn't go for a fourth signing or a retention. Um, Potentially they were not allowed to keep more than they were not allowed to retain four players. I have to check the rules. I'm not exactly sure. Maybe the fourth had to be a signing. Um, so that's definitely so that's a bit unfortunate that they couldn't keep the four players. But besides that, yeah, I can't complain. It's a very good looking team. It's a very good looking core to start with.
Yeah, and I think we did talk about this earlier too, Darshan, about Danny Gibson itself, right? The big spending that did happen from Sunrisers Leeds. They spent like 190,000 pounds on her. Again, they're taking a massive punt on her. Hopefully, she comes out good. But again, just further looking at the likes of Deepti Sharma and Jess Johnson itself, right? Again, such a spin dominant team. And just your overall thoughts on the bowling side of things before we get to the batting in just a bit.
So a bit like with MI London, I think their all rounders do help make that bowling lineup quite strong. You have Jess Jonathan, the left arm spin, also very capable of bowling at the back end. You have Deepti Sharma who can bowl through the middle even with the new ball with off spin. Sutherland again is a very good back end bowler. Those slower, but those variations such that she gets are very tough to hit. And then of course on top of that, then you have your bowler. You have someone like Hannah Baker, Kate Cross. You have potentially Cassidy McCarthy or maybe Rachel Slater from Scotland. Any one of those would be a good player to have in the team. So, and that's assuming Danny Gibson doesn't bowl. I'm not yet sure where her fitness is, but yeah. So even if she doesn't bowl, still think they have a very good set of options to cover for her. So I think the bowling side actually is quite strong. Kate Cross again is not a huge T20 bowler. She does. I don't think she's played it. I think the last T20 she played for London for England was actually the one that she had in Ireland. Yeah, she was captaining that series. To what extent she will thrive in T20s, I don't know. But even if they use her just with the new ball, I think they have enough resources to work the other phases. So if they can use her just sort of like to try and get a few wickets with the new ball, then almost even bowl three in the power play, then you can come back with you can use your other options through the middle and at the back end, and I think they should be okay with that.
Yeah, fair point. And I think even Sanju goes on to point in the chat that Adil Sutherland will be key for Sunrisers, right? I mean, with the bat and the ball, just interested to see how that happens. And yeah, Sanju also going on to ask us a very valid question of will the price actually affect Danny Gibson's performance? Time and again, Darshan, we've spoken, I think, in the IPL, the kind of impact that big money can have on performance, the whole price tag pressure itself. I think Venkatesh Iyer was also someone, who's spoken about how it does come with its own pitfalls and all that. There's so many case studies in that. Again, for Danny Gibson's sake, would you hope the price doesn't really impact her performance and there's like good brains in that think tank to sort of just calm her, keep her in a good mind space?
Yeah, Neha, you hit it on the nail. It's down to how she's worked with by the management. Um, you've got to say when you have a player with that price tag, you've got to sort of um, take that away. Just basically just tell them that you're separate the price tag from your performance. Like don't think about that for now, because again, it's not the player's choice that they went in asking for this sort of money. This is just how auction dynamics played out. It's not like they were it's not they didn't really have a choice in the matter, so you can't really blame them for that. So just tell her like, look, this is what you got, but look, where just think about your performance, don't think about the price tag. Of course that's easier said than done, so obviously as like Venkatesh Iyer, Rishabh Pant, these guys have said, it has an effect. But yeah, I think it just comes down to the management, how well they work with her, and so on and so forth. And actually there is a comment actually there I was interested, there's asking about AD Birrell, who will be coaching the Sunrisers Leeds women. So actually, that was actually another interesting one I just wanted to mention very quickly, because I don't think he's ever coached a women's team before. So this will be actually a new, he's a fantastic coach in the men's side. He was at the helm of Sunrisers Eastern Cape's three SA20 titles. So definitely got the coaching credentials, but I think transitioning from men's cricket to women's cricket is a challenge because just the things you have to think about are different. So that's something that I hope he takes into account. Um, I think the team they've started with is pretty good, but they will have to um, he will have to be a bit intelligent in that sort of in acknowledging the difference in the styles he might have to adapt. So hopefully he does that well. And yeah, but that's just something I just wanted to mention real quick.
No, thank you so much actually for mentioning it because in our live chat we did have this mention. And yeah, I mean, women's cricket is an entirely different beast itself. So, sometimes these men coaches can really struggle, but fingers crossed, that he's able to adapt really well to this scenario. And further looking at Sunrisers Leeds and their, batting side of things, I mean, Bryony Smith, right? A very interesting inclusion there. Loved what I saw of her last season for Trent Rockets. And when you further look at the batting lineup here too, right? I mean, Phoebe Litchfield again a hit and miss sort of a player, right? I mean, if she gets going, if she's given that right kind of position, she can be like, really, really important to that batting lineup. But the likes of Lauren Winfield Hill and you have other options too there, right? Like again, the batting looks a little bit fragile in that way. Again, Darshan, I'll just leave it open to you about your thoughts on that batting side of things. I mean, there are names, but still not looking like very, very convincing. Yeah, I think you're on mute, Darshan. Yeah. No
Sorry.
worries.
But yeah, so I actually agree with you very much on that, Neha. So yeah, I think they the they have Litchfield and Jonathan there. That's a very strong, I think, left hand 3-4. But beneath that, I think they could be caught a bit wanting. So you need Danny Gibson to really propel you through the middle orders overs because otherwise. I feel both Sutherland and Deepthi Sharma are a bit slow off the blocks with the bat. Haven't had humongous returns in T20 cricket lately, so you could have a few issues with that there. Still, both high quality batters, high quality players who can wield the willow, but they might not be the ones who can. If you need 40 in the last 3 overs, they may not be the ones who can get you across the line. So there will be some pressure on the top order to sort of do that heavy lifting. Bryony Smith is someone again who can whack it quite a bit. So I've seen her. I had the privilege of watching a very good knock from her live. So she's a very. I've seen the quality she has. So she can keep that going. That would be fantastic. I think Sunrisers would be very very happy with that. I am curious to know the opening combination they might go with because they do have a few options. They could go with a Lauren Winfield Hill up top. They could go with a Danny Gibson. Danny Gibson could potentially be the opener. They might even open with Phoebe Litchfield depending on what the captain feels. And yeah, so I'm wondering what sort of a choice they might have there. Um, yeah, so that's definitely something they could look at. And also a bit separate from batting, I'm also curious to know which direction they go with in terms of leadership because they do have a couple of very very good options there. Actually, that's the comment, just good, well timed. So I am actually curious to see who they will go with in terms of their leadership because they've obviously got someone very experienced in cross. They've got Sutherland and Litchfield who both captain in the WBBL, and yeah, so they have a lot of choices. So yeah.
Yeah, I think they'd probably be leaning a little bit to Kate Cross itself, right? Sort of comes in with those credentials of having been in like leadership groups and all of that. Plus, Captain England and also that sort of a reputation does come in. But even Lauren Winfield Hill is not a bad shout. Uh, I don't think they really give captaincy to like an Annabelle Sutherland or a Phoebe Litchfield itself, right? They'd want to probably like groom players from their setup. But interesting times. Let's see how that plays out. Hey, we have Shajan here, a friend of the podcast, goes on to say, rule is each team may sign a maximum of four, which can be, comprised of like four players from 2025, a maximum of three direct signings. Of those, max two overseas players and max two England contracted players. Probably just giving us like a little bit of indication of what the rules were itself. Thank you so much for that, Shajan. Needed that clarification itself. And about Phoebe Litchfield's batting position itself, unknown nobody goes on to say, Litchfield is three. Aussie seeing her as that potential number three itself. I think I'll just open this question to you, Darshan. This is, I think, a topic of like massive discussion, debate. Call it what you may. A lot of us feel that hey, Phoebe Litchfield is probably perfect for that number five position itself. Just look at her average, her strike rate, and all of that. T20 being such a volatile format and stuff. Sending her up that early. You lose a player of that caliber, then it really doesn't augur well for the rest of the batting. There's an entire school of thought that believes, hey, having her open up top would really add a lot of value. And Australia clearly seems to be using her in that number three position, sometimes as a floater as well. Where do you stand on the Phoebe Litchfield debate? Again, it's very team dependent, but like in this setup, where do you see her?
Yeah, it's a great question, Neha. So it's yeah, it's definitely a tricky one. Excuse me. I have her slated at three over here. But they could very easily move her up, especially if they want to accommodate maybe a different domestic batter to in the top order, or if they want to sort of move Danny Gibson up, or they want to. I know Jess Jonathan bats at three for Brisbane Heat, and she did a decent job batting at three for Delhi Capitals in the 2025 WPL. So if they want to slide her up to three, then maybe then you can move Litchfield down to four or maybe five. Um, I like Litchfield at three because I feel once the new ball is sort of the swing with the new ball is gone, I think she's someone who can really sort of take the attack back to the bowler, back to the bowling side. So that's something I think she's quite good at, and she can also just sort of keep the pace of the innings going quite a bit. So she's definitely a fine batter there. Um, yeah, so I think that's. But I think if you moved her to five, you could maybe move someone else at three. Maybe if you want to use a Deepthi Sharma at three, for example, or if you want to use Jonathan at three, or maybe Maddie Ward at three, someone like that, then this gives you the opportunity to do that. So yeah, it depends on on how the other players are comfortable. But either way, it's good for Sunrise to have such a flexible player like this who can really adapt to the needs of the team. And yeah, and while we're talking about Phoebe Litchfield, she has actually been saying that she's been working on her wicket keeping. So I wonder if we'll see that enough. They do have Lauren Winfield Hill, so probably she won't have to keep much here. But I wonder if we will see her take the gloves at some point in the near future. Maybe here, if they decide that they need to drop Winfield Hill for any reason.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be a very interesting one, right? How this batting lineup does shape because, as you were just telling this, Darshan, we had like, comments coming in like, but best players should come in sooner, probably, vouching for her to come in that top three position itself. Sports fan going on to say Litchfield, Winfield Hill, and Gibson, should form that top three. Very interesting that Gibson has gotten like a massive upgrade there, right? I mean, consider the reputation of being able to smack the ball quite a bit, but top three would be quite challenging. Shajin again going on to say everyone, except of course the openers, should bat one place above from where they bat in T20I since, this is 20 balls shorter too, right? I mean, yeah, we'll have to see, how that plays out. But yeah, that flexibility aspect is something, which we should keep in mind. But again, Darshan, like about the format itself, right? Are they still going to stick to like the 100 balls thing itself, or is it going to move to like a 20 overs thing? There's an entire discussion about that too.
Yeah,
Any clarification on that as yet, or
nothing I've seen. Maybe maybe something might come out once the men's auction is done. They might maybe take a call, but I find it unlikely they'll shift the format. Although personally, I feel that the format is a bit gimmicky. Um, the I still think it's yeah, but I think if fans are coming to watch it, if people are enjoying it, then it doesn't matter. Um, but it was definitely a big topic of contention. I think especially in the early stages of the 100 when they were still coming up, I think people were a bit they were not huge fans of the format, and but at the same time, it's if people are enjoying it, it's still what was more important to me was that the competition is well run, and it is. I think they have a good women's competition that runs in parallel to the men's. So if you're going out for a day with the family, you can watch both at once, and you can watch a men's game and a women's game uh, in the same ground. I think so. I think though that sounds really nice. If I was living in the area, I would love to do something like that. So if people are enjoying that, then it doesn't matter. So, but yeah, if they do change the format, it'll probably be announced maybe after the auctions. So that would be my guess.
yeah, I think this was a matter of large speculation. And I know nobody also going to mention in the chat that T20 cannot be possible. They want 6 hour games because you have like double headers happening. And T20 would clearly make it like 8, 9 hours, which is a big time commitment, right? For a lot of families and groups that are coming in to watch. But again, time will tell, what's the kind of like strategy or, aspect they want to go in with. And yeah, guys, we're almost like 1.5 hours into the stream. We still have two teams left. Please keep, spamming our live chat. This has been a really, really fun conversation. If you haven't already hit those like, comment, subscribe, share buttons, please do that. Let's keep the conversation going. But yeah, Darshan, let's talk about our second last team, which is Trent Rockets, right? Again, when you just look at their performances like over the past like couple of seasons, very interesting returns they've had. Again, they have Nat Silverbrunt, Kim Garth, Ash Gardner, and Sophia Dunkley, right, retained there. Again, do you think like Trent Rockets itself, they have like a very proven core and just like the way how it's shaping right now?
Oh, definitely. I think it's a fantastic top four to starting four. Dunkley, of course, has a lot of potential as an opener. Then Kim Garth, fantastic new ball bowler. Actually, all phase bowler. Kim Garth is quite good even in the back end. And of course, you it's difficult to have a better all-round pair than Silverbrant and Ash Gardner. I think the only close competition is Haley Matthews and Amelia Kerr. Otherwise, it's just very difficult to find a better all-round pair in this competition. I think two fantastic signings, especially given Silverbrant is playing as is obviously a domestic player. She's definitely one of the best in the competition. So getting her is obviously a huge win. And yeah, I think that core is extremely strong to for them to work off of.
Yeah, agreed with you there. And talking about the batting side of things itself, Darshan, like Beth Mooney itself, right, I think was definitely one of the most impactful signings for them. Offers a lot of stability up top. And when you look at the rest of the batting options too, right, just is looking well. Again, your thoughts on the batting department and what do you make of it?
Yeah, I think yeah, again, the price of her Mooney is obviously something that is debatable, but I think she's still an okay signing because I think she contrasts with Sophia Dunkley well. So she could be someone that sort of holds one end down while Dunkley has the freedom to maybe go for it and maybe try and get them a good start early up top. And she's also and between Mooney, Silverbrunt, and Gardner, I think pretty much every game you'll have at least one person who can bat deep and sort of keep the tempo going, especially if you're in one of those situations maybe where you're on a slightly tacky sort of surface and maybe you're looking at that sort of 150 is a winning score kind of thing. She's someone who could maybe hang around and sort of give you that little push at the end. So I think that's something she's quite good at. That's her bread and butter. So definitely very good top four. It's really after that that I'm maybe a little bit concerned. I did the middle order there. So like you have the way I've set it up is you have Georgia Adams, Elsa Lister, and Bess Heath at 4, 5, 6. Or sorry, 5, 6, 7. Um, I like Elsa Lister from what I've seen. I think she's very highly regarded. I think she's a very good quality player. So she could maybe even turn this around. But as things stand, I'm not entirely satisfied with that batting lineup. Um, I just feel that it is like if you don't have many runs, if you lose one or two wickets in the top, I think it's very easy for the team to collapse from there on. A very sort of similar problem to what we had with Southern Brave with that middle order, but I think this one, I don't think they have the same kind of batting depth that Southern Brave has. So you don't really even have the sort of the 7 and 8, the 8 and 9 who can come in and maybe hang around while someone else takes it. So I feel like they have a bit of they could potentially be caught out maybe where if they lose two up front, then they could very the rest of the side could be bundled out very quickly for another 30, 40 runs or something like that. So I hope not, but that's sort of where I see them at the moment.
Yeah, hopefully the ugly underbelly, as they say, right, of the middle order and the lower middle order doesn't really get exposed because they are going to be top order dependent, right? The likes of Beth Mooney, Ash Gardner, Nat Silverbrandt, as Sanju's comment also goes on to say, will be, I think the fulcrum, the linchpin of that batting effort itself, right? And talking about the bowling side of things too, right? I know you have the likes of Ash Gardner, you have Kim Garth there as well, but somewhere again that bowling department or unit itself not inspiring a lot of confidence like when you compare it to other teams, or is it just like a lot of like largely untested options there which is sort of giving us that impression? Like where do you stand on this, Darshan, on their bowling side of things, Trent Rockets?
Yeah, I agree with you, Neha. It's a little bit iffy. So Garth and Ash Gardner are obviously the two names that I imagine this set will work around. But the rest of the options are a bit sort of here there. So I have Katie Levick. Katie Levick is someone I've is quietly well regarded, but probably still more of a maybe a second tier option. Millie Taylor is actually the one I have in my 11 as well. So left arm wrist spin, um, just for the sort of that X factor of someone who can bowl that particular variation. So that's someone who is pretty high quality for that as well. But still, I still don't really see the same sort of bowling firepower as I might expect. Especially, I was a bit confused by the signing of Sam Bates, like a very good qualities, a very good spinner for sure. I think from watching her in Sydney Thunder, I think she's an excellent player. Does she make a team as an overseas player? I don't know. Because she doesn't bat either, so she's purely a left arm spin. She can bowl in the power play as well. She does it quite regularly, so that's maybe one thing that helps. But still, I feel like there were probably better options they could have gone for in place of Sam Bates here. Like if they wanted a spinner, there was Amanda Jade Wellington for the same fee. There was Shreyanka Patil for the same fee. If you paid us a little bit more, you had Charani for the same fee. Um, a little bit of Indian bias there, but there was a lot of options. If they wanted an all round, if they wanted a fast bowling option, they could have even gone for an Orla Prendergast for a similar base price, who could have also slotted in there at 4, which allows Gardner to come down to 5, and then that I think makes that batting lineup look a little bit better. Um, and also, as things stand, I don't think they really have a very good second fast bowler. So you have Garth. Nat Silverbrunt is obviously there, but she's not the one you want to be relying on as your second fast bowler. Um, she's someone maybe as a third or a fourth seamer, who can give you overs as a luxury. That's someone who you maybe want her as. Um, you don't really want her as your second seamer. So I don't really see anyone there who inspires me with a whole lot of confidence. Maybe they could go the Georgia Alvis, who can also give you, who can be a bit of that all-round option, but I don't think she doesn't really inspire me as a second seamer either. Um, so I think the best thing, the way I set this lineup up for when I was plotting this yesterday, was I would go with the three spinners. So I'd go with Sam Bates, Millie Taylor, Katie Levick, and just sort of lean on spin, which is probably their stronger suit here. Because I feel like the left arm spinner, the left arm spinner, will probably have a bit more impact than any of the fast bowler, the medium pacers they have set up there. So not the best lineup, um, but also I think that's probably their best shot at it. And their auction strategy was also a bit confusing because I think they were sitting on just that one purchase for a long time. So I feel like they maybe could have gone a bit harder for a few other names there. Um, Maybe just someone with a bit more experience in that middle order. So I feel like they probably missed out quite a bit there. Like I don't even know if it was a money thing because they did hold on to that. They had quite a bit of purse remaining for a bit, but yeah, not ideal. But yeah, let's see.
Yeah, probably a very questionable auction strategy there. This was one team that, again, as you know, really scratching my head based on the kind of seasons they've had before. You thought this would be a fresh start for them, but clearly you can see those options. You already see those problems sort of emerge and show up at the surface even before the season has started. Sports fan going on to add that feel there's too much reliance on Nat, who will probably lead as well. People have had a lot of concerns with her captaincy, but hey, this is the England captain we're talking about. So, she's definitely improved her
Yeah.
captaincy chops a lot more, I think, from her Trent Rocket era and like ongoing too. I know nobody also going on to say Australian coach little biased towards the Aussie players there, right? You can see an Aussie flavor there, the likes of Kim Garth, Ash Gardner being in that setup itself. But yeah, fingers crossed, Trent Rockets can still, pull off the unthinkable. We've seen, right, how scrappy teams still make their way through, and hopefully their past season horrors don't come to haunt them in that way. But yeah, Darshan, that sort of brings us to our last and final team, Welsh Fire, right? Another team that has had, again, let's say a fascinating couple of like past seasons, some very interesting names they let go of. But they have like Georgia Wareham, you have Georgia Ball, and Freya Kemp, right, who's been retained. Again, do you think Welsh Fire sort of built on that strong pre-auction base and that kind of ensured they went in with some good purchases there at the auction itself?
Yeah, I think it was a very good setup. I think Georgia Wareham again a very good pick. She's been doing so well the last couple of months in the last various tournaments she's been playing. Freya Kemp also again a very nice pickup. Unfortunate that Southern Brave couldn't retain her, but a very good pickup from them. And of course Georgia Val, who again is a very high ceiling player. We saw what she did in the finals of the WBL. So again, a very good setup, and also very good purchases as well. Sophie Devine being the headliner, of course, 210, and I think she fits into the squad quite well because I think she could bat. So the way I had said, we have Ella McCann opening with Georgia Ball with Sophie Devine at three, but you could easily swap her with Ella there, so that's also there. She could even slide down a bit to four if you want to use Sarah Bryce up a bit higher. Yeah, so I think it's a very good setup, and of course she'll be working with Georgia Wareham again, with who she worked with at Gujarat Giants. So yeah, I think it's a very well set up team from the way it looks. It doesn't it's one of those teams again that looks very utility. It doesn't look like it's star studded, but it's they have a lot of the roles well placed. It's a well oiled. It looks like a very well oiled machine, and yeah, it just looks pretty good, and yeah, looks like it'll get the job done.
Yeah, the purchases felt very intentional, right? When you look at Heather Graham signing as well, Sophie Devine as well, you could see, right, they were looking for that all-round balance, which is sort of met. But with Sarah Bryce, right, as that wicket-keeper batter itself, it adds a lot of depth. So again, Darshan, if you just had to briefly run us through the batting lineup and how you see that sort of like shape up, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I would go with Ella McCann and Georgia Vall up top, as I said, then Sophie Devine, and then I would actually put Sarah Bryce at four. I think she's got the temperament to play that sort of role. It's a difficult one, but I think she's got the ability to do it. She's batted more in the middle in leagues lately, and she bats at the top for Scotland. Then Georgia Wareham at five, where she did very well for Gujarat. I feel like she should be batting up top by batting higher than other teams have batted her in the past. So that was a good move. I go Freya Kemp at six, Heather Graham at seven, Fee Morris, M. Arlett, Sophia Smale, and Grace Potts. So they have pretty decent batting all the way down to seven. You have some runs that can also come from MR that can also chip in a bit with the bat. Sophie Asmail, I believe, can also chip in a little bit with the bat. So they've got a very good setup there, and yeah, very good mix of power hitters and just good and people who can sort of bat around. So yeah, great stuff, and it's a very well oiled lineup again. I think it's something that could do quite well there, go quite well there.
Yeah, and focusing again on the bowling side of things, right? Our chat also goes on to point out that M. Arnott is a good bowling option for Welsh Fire, and expecting good performances even from Freya Kemp, right, this season. Again, Darshan, like although they have like a lot of options in that batting side of things, the bowling still looks like a little dependent on certain players to step in, right? Yeah, again, over to you. Your thoughts on the bowling side of things and the billion-dollar question itself, right? Like, who will be the four overseas players? Actually, quite curious on how they will go about this. I think Georgia Wareham and Georgia Ball clearly make their place. There's Sophie Devine as well. But that fourth option, I think they'll probably have to still consider, right? Sarah Bryce, again, would she count as like a domestic player itself?
Yeah,
Or, yeah.
yeah, I think Sarah Bress counts as a domestic name because she plays for England in domestic cricket. So I think even on the official website, she's listed as a domestic name. So I think that's all good to go. So Heather Graham will still be their fourth overseas name. So yeah, and I agree with you. I think the one of the things I think, yeah, there is maybe a small sense that if they don't have MR, then their fast bowling looks a little bit here and there. But at the same time, I think that's where again the quality of their all rounders really stands out. So you have Sophie Devine can bowl with the new ball; she can also bowl a bit through the middle. You have Heather Graham, who's also very clever. She's got good variations at the back end. Georgia Wareham can bowl, is very good at the death, and also can give you that wrist spin through the middle. And even Georgia Wall can also roll her arm over a bit, although not quite as probably not a top tier option. But yeah, so they've got so even if MR doesn't have the best days, they still have enough cover, I think. Although I feel like that would massively dent the quality if Arnott wasn't to perform. Spin bowling wise, I think again they are quite. I think they are probably a little bit dependent on Wareham to fire. So I feel like they might miss out on some quality without her. But I think overall, yeah, it's like we said, dependent on a few players there to perform, but as linchpins. But I think there's enough support around them that I think um, it still will function as a very well oiled unit if they can if they're well managed.
Yeah, I think if a lot of the players just get their act together, this can be a team that can challenge a lot of opponents on any given day. I know nobody also going on to point that Belfire is a team, without big stars, utility players like you mentioned too. Apart from Sophie, where there's like no X factor per se, which I think makes this team incredibly special and one to watch out for. Can they really pull some tricks out of their hat and surprise opponents? Let's keep our fingers crossed that Belfire can put up that sort of a show. And I know, Darshan, I did promise you like a short and sweet conversation, but I think it could never be a short and sweet conversation, when we talk all things cricket itself. But again, do you have any last and final thoughts, almost as we wrap up this discussion? I know we should have probably waited for the wildcard picks to happen, but then come on, man, this topic was just waiting
Ah,
to
fair
be
enough.
discussed,
Yes.
and, all sports just being picked. Like it's almost 99% done in that way,
Oh
right?
yeah.
Yeah, just again, overall, your thoughts on how the auctions played
Um,
out, just excitement for the season ahead?
Yeah, it was actually it was a very interesting auction to follow, like we said at the beginning. I had expected. It's also very nice to see in this sort of an eight-team auction where you kind of see how the teams have to allocate their resources differently. So I'm mostly familiar with the WPL, which is only a five-team one, and you can kind of see in this sort of an eight-team format just how much more teams put in on their uncapped players and they're more the sort of those sort of the fringe domestic ones. And I think that really helps the ecosystem at large because now teams have to invest in better scouting because they need to make these sort of fringe players count. Because one of the problems I have with the WPL is because you really don't have to use your uncapped players in the WPL at all. Indeed, so many of them are usually there as just specialist fielders. But in a tournament like this, where the quality of the big names have to be divided more evenly, it really gives you an opportunity. It really forces you to use these players in prominent roles, and sort of that give and also forces you to sort of get them ready to do these big roles, and that helps their careers. That helps the ecosystem, and I think it'll help English women's cricket at large. So definitely a very pivotal auction, and yeah, I think it's gone super well. I'm excited to see how it pans out in the coming seasons, whether they'll do mini auctions or something like that. So yeah, very very exciting, and yeah. I'm also curious to see this one last little comment. I'm curious to see how we start if we start to see similar to what we see in men's cricket with sort of franchisees owning multiple teams across the world, if we see the start of something like that in women's cricket. I think MI and or my London and Southern Brave, the Delhi Capitals, have started to take advantage of that. I'm curious to see if other people also start that off, because we do have someone like a Michael Klinger who already works with Gujarat Giants, has picked similar players here. You have Mo Bobat and Malo who've worked with RCB, have picked a few similar players here. So let's see how many of those start to pan out as time goes on. I'm very curious.
Yeah, like a multiverse of madness in the world of women's cricket, something we definitely, lap up. And I think this auction has been interesting. Like, would have loved to see a lot more like women presence in like each of those tables itself, a lot more women head coaches. But chalo, it's still a start, like the 100 is still like right up there with leagues that are doing really well. You have 8 teams, a very competitive set of matches that have been happening, right, ever since the inception of the league. So hopefully it just gets bigger and better. But yeah, folks, we've spoken for almost 1 hour 45 minutes. It was a really really fun conversation. I'm sure we'll do a lot more of this when the 100 is going on itself. But Darshan, thank you so much for joining me. I know again this was very short notice, but you're always so kind to join me on I know TB and have these great conversations. To all the folks who stuck around, man, for this entire duration, like, you guys are the real champions. Thank you so much. Your comments really prompted the discussion, go in the right direction. So we're really, really grateful for you, sticking around. To all the folks catching this later as well, please make sure to follow Darshan on Twitter. Man posts some really, really good insights and nuggets of information. It's like a treasure trove of information there. So make sure to follow him on Twitter, and yeah, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. But yeah, folks, until next time, stay safe, take care. Let's keep enjoying the cricket. Cheers. Bye for now.